I think the very last thing on business entity compliance, um, it comes down to the ongoing requirements as well. It's not just a one-time setup. All the
Right.
ongoing,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
a great
yeah, yeah. So you have to have your registered agent to receive lawsuits, serve as a process. Hopefully, you don't get sued often or ever. But again, it's a statutory requirement. You need to have a reliable designee there, and then those annual reporting requirements. So as we talk, as we will with payroll, you do need to have the right vendors and technologies and systems to stay on top of all that stuff.
So maybe close out if you could, James, and maybe I'm not setting this up properly, but the way my brain is working, I'm thinking, what is the hierarchy about how an employer should be thinking about this, from the federal to the state to the local? How do I get in compliance? How do I research, and then how do I stay in compliance? Can you just kind of
Yeah, yeah.
yeah
So chances are you've already set up your company, whether it's an LLC, corporation, you have your EIN. The
yeah
next step, and you're going to repeat this every time you go into a new state, you're going to say, okay, this is what I'm up to. This is where that activity is going to take place down to the local level, right? The first thing you're going to do is look across all those agencies. What are the requirements? Most often, it's going to be your legal entity first. So the process is called foreign qualification with that Secretary of State. Then you'll typically go out, open your state tax accounts. So employer withholding, unemployment, sales, whatever you're up to. From there, you get into that local level, or
yeah
maybe your state level license if there is one. Then you'll get into your local licenses, your local tax accounts. There's too many to try to name off here, but
right.
you're really going to go in that order most of the time because you're going to need information from the previous step to move on. And the legal entity that we just talked about is that first step. It is that building block.
Got it. Okay, so back to our hair salon example. I get my EIN at the federal level for my entity. I register with Secretary of State my entity with so Missouri, because I'm in St. Louis, and then I have 5 locations spread around the greater metro area. Probably all 5 or some of those have those local townships or local cities are going to have their own business license requirements. And then once I get it all done, now I've got to put it in the tickler file to know when each one must be renewed each year. Is that kind of a good way to think of it?
That's a good way to think of it. So, thankfully, your salon example takes a little bit of time to open up the location, kind of look at what's the requirement of that township, securing the lease. It's not just jumping in. So you do have some time to look at the requirements. But yeah, I mean that's the other challenge, is keeping up with or keeping records. Right, you're going to have a ton of registrations, certificates as you go, and then you have ongoing renewals. You might have interim reports. What if something changes? What if your ownership changes? What if your address changes or content? All this has to be wheel and spoked out. So we've built a software to help clients track all that when it comes to their entities and licenses. We'll talk about that later on. But most of the businesses that we come into contact with are not doing it efficiently. It's a spreadsheet. It's Outlook. It's in 2 different departments, 3 different departments. Nobody's doing it at all. And there's a whole bunch of things that can cause challenges when this isn't centralized.